You got through this year. You can get through next year. And you can even make New Year's resolutions, personal visions, goals, even through that pain. I know that when there's events like holidays or New Year's coming in and you're supposed to make goals and you're supposed to be happy about it and you're supposed to be motivated, and all you can think about is the person that you've lost that is not going into this new year with you, or the pain that you are holding on. And maybe the pain is so much that it's hard to even take a deep breath, let alone make a New Year's resolution. What is this arbitrary line on January 1st where the world gets excited and wants to make goals and look for the future? It is an arbitrary line, but it's a reminder at least once a year. And I actually try to do it twice a year, in January and in the summer, of looking at my life, reevaluating my goals, and trying to move forward. I have always been like that. But if you know me, you also know that I have gone through extreme grief and enmeshed with trauma. I have lost 3 children over the course of 20 years. And in 2024, I lost my husband. So it wasn't a good year. And maybe 2024 wasn't a good year for you either. But this arbitrary line on January 1st is just that. It's just a time where we can say, what do I want 2025 to look like? And maybe you're stuck in your grief and you're so angry and it's so traumatizing that you're like, I don't want anything out of 2025. Just try to stay and listen for just a little while as I try to gently nudge you to make some decisions for yourself. Making positive goals and decisions in the midst of pain feels stupid, feels unreasonable. But what if those little goals were to heal your heart a little bit, or to make the pain just a little less? I teach what I call the mentally strong method. And it is a way to think through your problems, organize them, and make decisions in line with what you want. And when you have grief and trauma, I can guarantee that pain of grief and trauma has enmeshed with everything else in your life. It's enmeshed with your anxiety, your negative self-talk. Maybe you've got some spiritual conflict around this loss. And I talk about this in my teaching. How do we actually organize those things? Today, in honor of this arbitrary line of New Year's, we're going to actually talk about the 4th element, which is called the personal vision. What is your personal vision? Personal visions are not just goals, because we can make goals and statistics say that so many people make New Year's resolutions and by February, they're no longer doing that New Year's resolution. So it's not so much about, getting to that next goal, but it's also about making realistic expectations of yourself and where you really want to go. It's real easy to get caught up in the hype of, I'm going to make my New Year's resolution that I exercise every day, or that I eat right, or that I lose weight. And all of those things are good for our physical and probably mental health. But why are you doing it? A personal vision is about who you are, who you want to be, and how you want to show up in the world. And you should have a personal vision for multiple areas of your life. So for example, a personal vision around your mental health, right? If you are struggling with grief and trauma, your mental health is likely suffering. What are some things that you could do for your mental health? And maybe, you just stop for a moment and list those things. But a personal vision goes a little bit deeper and wider into not just what I want to do, it's who I want to be. So let's say you struggle with depression or anxiety, or you have this, grief or trauma, and it just feels like an overwhelming weight on you. And you say, my goal for 2025 is to not be depressed anymore. Well, that's not really fair, And I can tell you that as someone who has lost children and my husband, and I have publicly grieved and I have publicly struggled, and I can tell you I've struggled with depression before I even had a reason to be depressed. Probably in my teen years it started. And I have learned, some things to work through that. I have gone on and off medications in my life and done different therapeutic techniques to try to address depression. And so the likelihood that I could go into 2025 and say, I will not be depressed is not fair to myself. So I'm going to share my personal vision around mental health, and I want you to think about, what is your personal vision around mental health? My personal vision around mental health is to be authentic to myself and to others. That means you. Like, I'm authentically trying to tell you my struggles and how I overcome them. So my mental health goal is not to not have depression, but it is to be authentic with myself and with others about that struggle. Part of my mental health vision is to authentically be mentally strong. And I think, that's my whole brand. But when people think mental strength, they think power, pushing through, not letting things impact you. And the reality is I'm an empath. Things impact me. Other people's pain impacts me. My pain impacts me. And so I wouldn't be authentic if I was that kind of mental strength, right? So to me, mental strength is being able to think through these things that are going on, being authentic with that, organizing them, doing things about it, finding my joy. So for me, my mental health personal vision is that I can be authentic and balanced and truly be resilient, right? We talk about resilience, but what it really looks like is people just pushing through regardless. And it's not just about pushing through your pain. It's about learning how to feel your pain, learning how to cherish and let go and do the different things to truly be mentally strong. So when you're thinking about your 2025 mental health goals, I want you to think about, who do you want to be? One of the things that when I was a teenager, I had a lot of issues with self-regulation. Like I would have, emotional outbursts and things like that. If that's you, maybe just being able to be present with yourself and control those emotions, learning to control those emotions, right? Like, who do you want to be? How do you want to authentically show up in the world? That would be your personal vision. And a personal vision is not just for 2025, right? A personal vision is for your life. I want to show up authentically resilient for the rest of my life. What does that mean for 2025? And that's where you would put in your actions of, what do you want to do in 2025? I have done a lot of self-work, and 2025 for me is just learning to be present and practicing those things on a maintenance level rather than a fight or flight. So I want you to stop and think about, what are your mental health goals? Another area that I often challenge people in, or encourage people to have a personal vision, is in their spiritual health. In professional mental health, we often don't talk about your spiritual health because there's this fear in the American culture that I'm going to try to tell you what you should believe. This often happens in a church environment where, they're saying, this is how you should believe in God. And so it's often not talked about in the mental health space. But I'm talking about it because it is a part of who we are. We are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual beings. Our soul is eternal. And so having a spiritual personal vision, right? Again, personal visions are, who do I want to be spiritually for the rest of my life? And spiritual goals and spiritual personal visions are very important in grief. If you have lost someone and you are like, what am I going to do? I don't want to make goals without this person. I've lost my husband this year. And I told you, I lost my daughter Maya in 2021, my son Reggie in 2016. and Johnny in 2005. Like, I understand grief. And when I say your spiritual personal vision, do you want to wrestle with God? Do you want to tell him how you really feel about losing this person that you love? Maybe your first reaction is, I'm angry at God, or I don't believe in God. Don't get hung up in the words. Your soul is eternal. And I want you to think about your spiritual health, especially as it relates to your grief. Authentic is kind of my word. And for me, my spiritual personal vision is to have an authentic relationship with God. Now, if you know my story, I talk a lot about some of the doctrines of the church have kind of hurt my soul, especially in losing my children. And I really wrestled with that. And in the Mentally Strong method, we call that spiritual conflict, and you work through that. But I desire to have a real relationship with God. And I avoided kind of congregations or church groups because most church groups have a doctrine that they believe in together, and they want you to believe that same doctrine. And I was really struggling. And so I haven't really been to church since Maya died in 2021. And before that, it was significantly decreasing. And so one of my 2025 goals is to see if I can have connection with people who believe in God, right? And so I'm going to try to connect in certain church groups and things like that. Now, my goal is not your goal, right? But remember, figuring out your personal vision will help you, because your personal vision is for the rest of your life, will help you know what am I trying to accomplish in 2025. So my overall goal is to have an authentic relationship with God, which I have spent the last several years really wrestling with him. And I do have that connection. And so, but now I'd like to have a connection with people. And so that's my 2025 thing, but it's not going to change the personal vision of an authentic relationship with God. And then the last one I want you to consider, and everybody considers part of their New Year's resolution, is physical health. And this is not about losing weight. And I can tell you so many New Year's resolutions are about losing weight, getting fit, getting healthy, and then it goes to the wayside in February, right? Why are you doing it? That's your personal vision. What is your personal vision around your physical health? And for me, I am an adventurous person. And when I'm not in shape, I can't go do things. For example, if my friend said today, hey, I want to go on a 10-mile hike. You want to come with me? I might have to say no because I'm just not in that kind of shape. But I love to do adventurous things. I love to go skydiving. I would love to, be skiing and snowboarding and doing fun things. But the last time I went skiing, honestly, half a day of skiing, my legs hurt, I was tired, my endurance was very low. So my personal vision around physical health is to be able to do adventurous things. In 2025, I'm going to start exercising 3 to 4 times a week so that I can build up some strength and endurance, right? Do you see the difference there? The personal vision doesn't change, but you also need to give yourself grace in the midst of grief. Grief is very, very heavy on the body. And although I lost my husband this year, it was after, a year of hospice. We knew it was coming. It was after working through the death of Reggie and Maya and knowing that he was going to pass. And so I think I'm a little bit ahead of the game. So if you are new in your grief, maybe your grief is your physical is not to, exercise 3 times a week. Maybe it's to stretch once a week and try to release some trauma from your body, right? So it is about knowing what your personal vision is and knowing what you could actually accomplish realistically in 2025. And I challenge you to write down these personal visions and your 2025 goals, right? Because they're just a stepping stone to that personal vision. And there are many times that I make a goal and I don't hit it. That is about grace for yourself. This whole video is just about maybe giving you a little bit of inspiration to find something you could say you want to accomplish in 2025. Grief is hard. It is heavy. It is physically heavy. So I'm going to go through some questions that people who are experiencing intense grief have asked me. I love what you're saying about goals. I really want to make some goals and a personal vision. I just can't. I can't do anything. And those words of I can't are often either just negative thoughts, maybe core beliefs, what I call core connections, or you could actually be experiencing clinical depression. And so the fact that you're asking me this question, I commend you. You are trying to get better. Watch some more of my videos. I talk a lot about we have to feel this pain, and time does not heal all wounds. But if we are feeling the pain of grief and separating it from the trauma, processing the trauma and letting it go, we will begin to feel it less intensely and less frequently. I have a grief intensive coming up. Click the link below so that you can kind of learn about what I do in the grief intensive. It's where you come and spend a week with me and we go through all of these things. How do I feel the pain of grief? How do I separate the trauma and get rid of that trauma? How do I cherish this relationship? How do I wrestle out this spiritual conflict? What do I do with this overwhelming anxiety? And the thoughts in my brain are just so negative. I know I need to stop, but I can't. So click the link below, learn about the grief intensive, which does have a medical component of a psychiatric evaluation with me. But at very least, go to your doctor and be evaluated for clinical depression. Grief and trauma can cause clinical depression. And when you want to, and you really are trying and you just can't, you may need a medical intervention. So don't deprive yourself of that. Next question is about kind of this spiritual health. And the person kind of gave their story of really having a belief system in God, but feeling separated, like that God is not there for them. And they've done some spiritual goals in the past prior to their grief of like reading the Bible every week or having some goal around that. But those things are not providing any comfort in the pain of grief. And I can completely understand that. If you have not watched my grief documentary, that same link below that talks about the grief intensive will allow you an opportunity to hear my story and then watch the grief intensive. Watch the grief documentary. About 9 months after Maya passed. Now, if I tell my story, my son Reggie and my daughter Maya and my husband have this rare neurodegenerative condition called DRPLA. Reggie was medically sick his entire life, medical trauma entire life. Although Maya had the same condition, she was not sick. She took medicine for seizures. She had never spent the night in the hospital. She was a vibrant, loving young lady. When she died in her sleep, unexpectedly, not sick, I was probably in shock for 6+ months. And it wasn't until I realized that I had not even started the grieving process for my daughter that I went through to do the grief intensive. And during this time, I took 45 days and I did some sort of grief ritual every day, including a lot of spiritual practices that were not in line with my spiritual belief systems or my cultural church doctrine, right? And I only say that, I want you to watch it But I only say that because I truly believe it's about an authentic relationship with God. And so when you think about your spiritual health, you have to be honest with yourself and with God, your higher power, the universe, being truly honest, not what I've been taught to believe. What do I actually believe? And is it in conflict with what has happened in my life? Oftentimes, when you have experienced extreme grief, when a person, I still believe this now, but I had to wrestle with this. But prior to losing my children, I believed that if I prayed for my children's protection, God would protect my children. I believe that God loved me and he would protect me. And I lost Johnny unexpectedly, but I still believe that. And then I lost Reggie after 10 years of medical trauma. And I was wrestling with that, but not to the extreme of when I lost Maya. When I lost Maya, my emotional mental separation from my belief in God was pretty extreme. All I knew is that my soul was eternal, their soul was eternal, but nothing else that I believed. Like I had to wrestle with all of those things again and decide what I believe. And I talk about this in my documentary, so do that. But I am able to communicate with my children, especially with Maya. And there are things that she has said to my soul that allow me to continue to live in this world happy and joyful, knowing that eternity will be with them. But that's my story. And I think this often happens in spiritual belief systems is someone has a story and then they teach it to other people. I'm not trying to teach you that my story is truth. I want you to personally wrestle with what do I believe and how do I reconcile that with what has happened to me. It's a very, very personal question. But click the link below, learn about the Grief Intensive, and you'll have an opportunity to watch the grief documentary after you've watched a few of those videos. So you can do this. 2025 is going to be a better year. It might not be your best year, but it can be a better year. If you are struggling with some of those physical symptoms, I encourage you to watch the physical symptoms of grief because they're probably showing up in your body. We can do this.